All right, welcome. What is up? Tom and I are here for the Braintrust episode number 3. We're waiting on Adam, but you might know Tom from the last episode, the self-proclaimed late summer duck. Is that is that what you called
That's
yourself?
it, everybody. Thanksgiving turkey. Sure, you can call me a
Okay, yeah,
Thanksgiving turkey.
not a spring chicken, a late summer duck.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah,
today we are talking about some
yeah.
advice if you are a new poker player. But before we get to that, I got to discuss something with you, Tom. So this week I'm gonna let me step all the way back here. So I was watching this thing on when I was a kid, 6 years old. I walk up, my parents are watching Jurassic Park.
Okay.
I end up watching part of the movie, and then it just gave me nightmares forever. I was like, scientists are going to bring dinosaurs back to life. We have to stop this. This is a crisis for humanity. I was just worried and panicked, gave me nightmares, all this stuff. And of course, eventually my folks were able to be like, Sean, you're being ridiculous. There's no dinosaurs. Don't worry about it. It still took me a long time.
Right.
Well, the other day, I'm watching Tesla debuting their new AI robots. Have you seen this?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And just the thought of like, I'm sure you've seen iRobot or whatever, right? With Will Smith, where the robots all come to life and all that stuff.
Right.
I'm like, it just feels a little too much like the Jurassic Park fear I had as a kid. It's almost like scientists are now bringing dinosaurs back to life. Just a little more adult form of that.
Right.
But
Yeah, like nobody asked the question whether they should do something. They just thought, can we do it?
it's go time.
It's
Yeah.
like, okay, we'll give it
Yeah.
a shot, right? And it's like, oh my God, what if you're successful? Same with like these people talk about AI and like, oh, AI could be the end of us all or whatever. And it's like, okay, isn't anyone kind of thinking like should think like a poker player? Like, is there like a 1 in a billion chance of this happening, or is it like 1 in 100?
Yeah.
Right? Like if it's 1 in 100, probably we shouldn't be doing anything.
Right.
But hey,
Right.
somebody's gonna just think, well, I could try to do it. And 99 times out of 100, it's gonna work out. So
Okay, so here's the question. Let's say that Tesla makes an offer. I'm not saying they're going to do this, but let's say they make an offer to you. They come to your door and they say, Tom, we're giving you this robot for free. It's going to live in your house and it's going to do the mundane tasks, going to fold your laundry, cook for you, all that stuff. Are you taking the robot for free?
I'm married. Okay, so that could be interpreted 2 different ways. I'm going to say it's being interpreted as when it comes to decisions like that, it would not be my decision.
Okay. That is
when we broadcast this later, my wife sees it, she's gonna be like, oh, okay, that's good. Anyway, so
it is not at all where I thought you were going, and I was like, whoa, this is a bold statement you're making here. Let's hear this one out.
Yes, welcome back to the 1950s. No. She's kind of like me. We've tried to, I mean, of course, I got a computer and stuff, but I don't have any smart anything. I'm too dumb to operate smart anything. So
an AI robot might be above the level you're comfortable with?
There's no chance. If I were a bachelor, there is absolutely, I'm perfectly happy to wash a dish, right? Clean a toilet. It's fine. No problem. I don't want to be killed in my sleep.
That's exactly. I was like, man, the upside is that it frees you, right? And your day is just like, it's unbelievable. Anyway, I thought like, man, the upside's incredible, but the murdered in your sleep by a machine is not incredible. Yeah. I don't know that you could give me one for free and I'd be excited about it. So,
well, and also like if the machine realizes, okay, it's got an IQ of whatever, 1500, and I got an IQ of like a garden gnome. It's going to be like, why are you not doing the cleaning and I'll do the interesting free stuff? It's like, what am I going to say? Yeah, of course. Hey, you're way smarter than I am. You could make better use of the free time.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe I should be doing stuff that you need done, right? You know, okay, you need this thing swept so you can more easily get from A to B or whatever. Yeah, okay. The human's going to do all the grunt work.
Part of the equation is how quickly does it recognize our stupidity?
Probably pretty fast. Probably,
right? Yeah, definitely. All right, well, that's enough. AI robots. I think it's an interesting conversation, but let's get into it. So really quick, tell everybody, so you have an interesting background because you're not just a poker player. You have this background in chess. So give us like a 10 to 30-second synopsis of your background in game theory.
My background in game theory. Well, okay, I will say, all right, for people who play poker, I will say that the part where chess might be interesting for poker players is that once computers became really strong, okay, so I mean, a lot of people probably know about like Gary Kasparov losing to the machine, but even before then, it was pretty clear that machines were going to be better than humans. It was only a matter of time.
Sure.
But what, at least for me, what I didn't realize was that, and this would be maybe the last, say, 5 to 7 years, that not only were we playing chess poorly, but in some ways we were playing it wrong. So like it kind of makes me think that like they're talking about solvers and all these weird things that the computers come up with. That's not surprising to me. It's not at all surprising because the same thing happened in chess. There's a lot of positions where we thought, this position is good for white because of blah, 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 blah. You put in a machine, the machine's like, nah, this isn't good for black, you idiots. Right. And these are like the best chess players in the world working for decades on the problem, which makes me think like once AI gets into God knows what, like medicine, engineering, it's going to be like all sorts of stuff where very, very smart people over the course of centuries came up with ideas and the ideas were just wrong. They were just completely wrong.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to be open to the idea that everything you know could just be wrong. Like, I mean, I hate to say that because like I literally, like at that point I'd been like an international chess master for like 20 years just to realize like 90% of what I know is just wrong.
Is incorrect.
It's just completely wrong. Like extremely humbling thing. Right.
Yeah.
And so poker players you gotta be aware of that. Like that could come. It would not surprise me at all.
Definitely.
Not surprise me at all. Lots of stuff.
Tom, I just realized I am listening to you without headphones, so it's probably echoing badly. Let me grab my headphones real quick.
Okay, sure.
Sorry about that. I just recognized that it is probably sounding terrible on the other side. Okay, can you still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, there we go. All right. So interesting thought though on what that's gonna reveal. I don't know. Let's talk. So how long have you been playing poker really quick?
Live poker. Okay, not including when I was a teenager where we played 7-card stud and it was limit.
Yeah.
Like there were
like casino poker
back then.
Yeah.
But when I go to, there was like card clubs.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But 5 years maybe. I've got 5 years of live poker. I've got maybe 700 hours of live play.
Nice. All right, so let's start off with kind of a basic question, but what is like the first thing that comes to your mind? What do you wish you knew when you started out?
About live poker?
Just about poker in general. Like the first time you're heading to the casino, you're actually going to put some money on the line. What do you wish you knew going into that first session?
That the average 1-2 live. Okay. The person sitting across from you in the main, if it looks like they're not really thinking about anything, it's not because they have a good poker face. They're just
said.
Not thinking about it.
Yeah.
Like for a lot of people, the game is just a way to pass time.
Yeah.
Right.
Agreed.
They just want to see the story unfold.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of sympathy for that because when I first started playing chess, that was the big excitement for me. It was like stuff would happen. I had no idea what was going on. Right.
Sure.
And it was just like, wow, it's a unique adventure. It's like make your own adventure. Right.
Yeah.
And so for these people, like a lot of that stuff is the same. It's just they're making their own adventure. Right. I'm playing 9-6 suited and I'm trying to make an inside straight and anything could happen. Wow. It's like really exciting.
Yeah. And almost not even caring what the price is. Right. Of just like, hey, this is entertainment.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a really, really good point too. And I think that, I think a lot of people will, I don't know about you, but when I first showed up to that table and it was really intimidating, right? To sit down and the exact thought, it's good that you say this because the thought in my mind is, okay, these guys know what they're doing. I don't. and I don't want to let them know, and I want to be careful and all that stuff.
Right.
And now, after playing for a decade or whatever it's been, I look around and I'm like, okay, that guy's here to watch sports. That guy is, he's on his phone and he's really on TikTok more than he's doing anything else.
Yep.
You know,
Having a
most,
beer, having a chat.
yeah, exactly. There to meet people. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Really good point. I think the thing I wish I got this fairly early, but I didn't get it right away. And I wish I had it right away, but I watched Phil Hellmuth had this little like for beginners course thing that he was giving. And he's like, hey, you should play tight hands and then don't open all this trash.
Right.
And it was probably 3 months into my poker career. But if I had that day one, it would have saved me some money in those early days where I was really just trying to establish myself in the game, not really knowing what I was doing and spinning my wheels and burning cash. Right.
Okay.
So I think those opening ranges were really critical. But yeah, I wish that I had known going to the table, hey, have a solid opening range and have a better idea of that before I sat down. Because when I first sat down, obviously I had an idea of what poker was, but I wasn't just opening premiums. I was there splashing around with all kinds of crap.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I never really had that problem, I have to say.
Nope.
I mean, even when I first started playing online, I mean, I'm pretty conservative. Despite what I look like, I'm a pretty conservative person. I don't, I'm a straight arrow guy.
Like.
In chess, we call them cement heads. I'm a cement head.
Okay.
Right? There's either the berserkers or the cement heads. I'm Mr. Cement. So I'm not the guy that's going to be like, I'm going to outplay these people. I'm playing 7-deuce in the cutoff, and I'm going to triple barrel. I'm not that guy. Even when I was young, I was never that guy.
So where does the cement head thing come from?
I have no idea. It's just
okay.
It's just like head of cement, can't be, not going to do anything exciting, slow moving, kind of. Yep.
All right. So let's see. Let's talk bankroll a little bit. I think this is a good question, but how do you handle your bankroll, and is it any different now than it was back then when you first started?
Is it any different now? I don't have a separate bankroll.
Okay.
I do keep track. I have a notebook. I use pencil and paper. I keep track of the number of hours per session to the nearest 15 minutes.
Okay.
I keep track of every single dollar. So if I win, $162, I write 162. If I lost $247, I don't forget to write that down.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people do. I'm not one of those people. I think, if you're just playing for fun, I don't really think you need a bankroll, assuming you have like some source of income. But I do think you should keep track, right?
So like if you have a replenishable bankroll, I guess is what we would call that. Where
so if you got a job
not
that
affecting
pays
your bottom line,
right. If you got a job that you at the end of the week or every payday you have an extra couple $100.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of people out there that if you ask them how they did, they would say, "Oh, I'm about break even." Or
a lot of people say that, but I think even a lot of people will say that they are like a winning player, even if they're not.
Sure. Right. And so if you don't, what do they say? If you don't measure it, it's not, you can't manage it if it's not measured. So you should measure it. Right. And like last year wasn't a very good year for me. I was still profitable, but it was about a third of what I made the year before, even though I played slightly more hours.
Really?
Yeah. So.
And no game change.
Not really.
You didn't change stage.
I thought I played better.
Players.
Truthfully, I thought I played better last year than I did the year before. And that could just be part of the variance of poker, or I could be wrong, right? It could be Dunning-Kruger. I might be the living example of Dunning-Kruger, right? Where like I've now reached the point where I know enough that I think I'm good. Well, I haven't gotten good enough so that I know I'm not good. If you know what I mean?
Yes.
I
understand what you're saying.
Okay. So yeah, like it could be that we could be in that situation. I'm not sure. But again, like I only played about like 200 hours last year,
Hmm.
and a little bit less the year before. It's not
Okay.
a lot, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like 5,000 hands, maybe 6,000 hands.
Sure.
Not much.
Yeah. Well, with when I'm handling my bankroll, I like to from day one. I told my wife, I said, "Hey, I want to do this," and she was kind of reluctant. Like, "You're gonna go take money to the casino, and like
Same
I
with
think
my
she
wife.
really viewed it as that, like, oh, here comes a degenerate thing that Sean's gonna go to the casino, he's gonna
Yep.
lose all his money, and then here goes our savings, and here goes our bills,
Right.
and so she was really concerned, and I said, okay, let me put aside, and I think it was like $800 or something. I was like, this money is all my money, and if I lose it, it's gone. Like the only thing I can spend on it is my spending money after that.
Right.
So if it's gone, it's gone, and then I'm done. And so there was a lot of pressure on that $800.
No
$800. And
kidding.
looking back, I'm like, wow, my career could have ended like that with a couple
Yep.
bad sessions. But I was fortunate enough to just be able to like grind through it first and not lose it. And that's slowly I've just been able to accumulate and accumulate. And that bankroll is built to a healthy amount now where it doesn't feel threatened by going to play a
Right.
a 2-5, 3-5 game. But I think that's really important. I think especially if you're out there and you're like, yeah, my girlfriend, my spouse, whatever, she's really worried about the money. I think that's kind of the way to approach it is like, hey, here's my amount. And if it's gone, it's gone. Let me ask you this. Did you play tournaments at all? And what are your thoughts on playing a tournament early on versus playing a cash game?
I played maybe 4 live tournaments in my life. I came in
Okay.
third in one, but it wasn't very big. So it was like
Okay.
a 25-player tournament or something. And I don't know, I made 4 times my entry fee or something. I
Mm-hmm.
don't really like tournaments.
Yeah.
Um, I like cash games because you can come and go when you please.
Yeah.
Um, when it comes to tournaments, you could play really well. I mean, poker already, you could play really well and lose, but in tournaments, you could play really well. You could get your money in great and you win nothing. And you could do
Yeah.
this for a month,
Yeah. And
right?
you can do it in 4 to 5 hour chunks or longer
Yeah.
of just like grinding and working and getting nothing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I would not recommend that anybody starting out playing tournaments unless, like if you're playing with your friends or something, that's different. But to go to the casino, also the rake in those tournaments is unbelievable.
Tends to be really high. Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
you're playing in like $100 tournament where the entry fee is 125 and they're taking $25 off every player,
Oh yeah.
like you'd have to be, even if you're the best player in the room, like you're probably not, your ROI, like your return on investment is probably not very good.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to tend to agree with you there. Yeah, the one thing I will say, I started out with tournaments, and it was like I had watched the WSOP from the year prior, and I was like, all right, I got to get in there. It looks like fun. And my brother and I went down, bought in for my birthday, and I played a $45 tournament or something. What I will say, and of course I didn't win, but what I will say is that there is some value if you're like really nervous about playing for the first time in going and knowing that $45 is your cap to
Is all you
lose
can lose. Sure.
because you're going to get you should on average get a couple hours of play unless you're a
Hmm.
total maniac. Those blinds are so deep, like it should buy you an hour or two of play. Whereas you go into a cash game with $45, you got a couple of hands tops,
Right. Right.
maybe one hand.
Hmm.
And so I will say that when you're first just wanting to like get comfortable sitting at a table, get used to just kind of the back and forth, the dealer, the positions, and all that. I don't think there's anything wrong with throwing maybe even 2 bullets at a cheap tournament just to feel the flow and kind of get the game, and then spend a lot of time studying and move to the cash because long term, like you said, the return on investment's way better. But I
Okay.
will say I think I'm going to agree with you there, but I don't mind it as your very first way to start. So let's see what would be all right. So as you advanced, what has helped your game the most? Once you got beyond just absolute basics, what started to move your game in a new direction?
Well, I would say, okay, so step one is understanding the value of your cards. So that's kind of what you're talking about before, right? Having a reasonable opening range. Then I guess step two is understanding as best you can how the other people view their cards. So let's say, for example, you have, pocket queens. Let's say you got red queens, right?
Mhm.
And the flop is ace of spades, king of spades, nine of spades, and you've got pocket queens, and there's a bet and a raise and a call. Your pocket queens are garbage,
Sure.
right? So to understand that based upon the action around you, that the quality of your hand is not it's not one of these things that's sort of in a vacuum. It's sort of based upon the communal cards plus the action of the people around you. So
Yeah.
A lot of people, I think, never get past the point where you'll see in the game, like there's a couple of people in the games that I play, like if they get pocket aces, for example, they are not folding no matter what happens.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
flop could be whatever. They got black aces and the flop is, Jack 10, 9 of hearts.
Right.
And there's a bet and a raise and a call, and it looks like two other people are going to go all in. And this person's like, I got aces, man. What can I do?
Yeah.
I couldn't get away from it. I was like,
And,
okay, but look what's happened.
yeah. With a complaint at the end, right? Like,
yeah,
how could this have been avoided?
Yeah, it was impossible. So then what happens is, this happens a couple of times, and then what happens is you get people who, okay, their normal raise is like $10, and then every 5 hours they raise to 30. This open raise
Right.
to 30, and you're like,
yeah,
now what could this be? Right? This dude who's like always complaining that his aces get cracked, who usually makes it $10, now suddenly makes it $30 over nothing.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just like, okay, you got aces. I fold.
Right.
And then they'll show you, oh, I had aces. Like, I don't want to get them cracked. It's like, well, congratulations. You won $3.
$3. Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah. You bought one round of blinds. Yeah.
But they're thinking, well, okay, but last time I had aces, I lost like my entire stack.
Yep.
Right. So winning $3 a lot better than, say, losing $200.
Right.
But that's because they're just like married to their hand. Oh, this hand is amazing. It's like, okay, but not anymore.
I think you bring up a really good point too of something that is worth talking about is just bet sizing in general, where it's really easy early on feeling that like this is a good hand, this is my moment. I don't get dealt many of these.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a really normal tendency to like just push hard and go, all right, normally I make it 10, but 15, 20, whatever it is, just to like I got to get the juice while I can. And you're so much better off to not be read by your opponents. And like Tom's saying, if you go in and just show to the world, hey, I have the goods this time, people can play, but it's very easy to exploit. And as an opponent, you can easily go, okay, yeah, I might have a good hand, but I can fold here. I can fold pocket jacks to that big raise because I'm not worried. I know its queens are better. It's never going to be like pocket nines like that, right? So,
and admittedly, it's tough to do when you've been card dead.
Yeah.
And you finally played a hand after 40 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to try to, in my opinion, like if you're just starting out, you should try to, like I kind of think of it like kind of like watching a movie. So you're sort of paying attention to kind of everything that's going on at the table, like kind of classify people, like is this kind of character and how they interact and like, does seat 2 and seat 4, are they pals? Maybe seat 6 and 7 really don't like each other. How do they view me? Right. I mean,
your image matters a lot.
Yeah. I don't want to get super, egocentric about it, but I'm going to be in every hand that I'm playing. So absolutely. I kind of need to know, like, do people have an opinion about me at all? Right. What are they going to think about you?
Yeah.
Right? And you got to ask yourself that question, right? So if you're like, say, some 22-year-old and you got, tattoos and you've got the funny colored hair and stuff, like they're probably going to think you're a maniac, but maybe you're not, right? But their appearance, or if you're like 98-year-old guy and you've been there, like you're sitting there like the whole time, they're going to think, oh, this guy's got the nuts.
Let's talk about your image for a second, because we've talked about that a few times on the Discord. I think you've been able to play that to your advantage nowadays a lot more.
Yeah, like you see people in poker complaining that like nothing has happened for 30 minutes, but when you're playing chess, like nothing happens for 5 hours. So I got no problem like waiting around forever, and people realize, like I don't tell them that I'm a chess player, but they realize like there's something wrong with this guy. Like he doesn't seem to get bored, and he
Sure.
hasn't played a hand in 45 minutes, and then he plays, plays a hand, and then he doesn't play another hand for 45 minutes. I don't.
Yeah.
Right, and so people are going to notice, right? Because you're
Right.
not doing what everybody else is doing. But then I kind of think of it like the average poker player is going to lose money, right? So if you're doing
Mhm.
what everybody else around you is doing, you're going to get the result that everybody around you gets, which is you're going to lose money. So,
Yep.
um, so I
That's
I just I try to do different things all the time. Like I experiment with
yeah.
different things, but I don't just because everybody else makes it 7x or whatever. I tried 3x. I tried 5x. I mean, one time I might try 10x just to see what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
Experiment
I
with
think
different stuff.
I think one of the things that we've talked about in the Discord that I think you do well is your image is super tight. Like everybody
Yeah.
just respects your game and they assume, hey, like Tom
They
has
don't
it.
respect my game, but they know I'm super tight. Yeah.
Well, there's been moments where
Right.
people have folded to you just going where you've been like, wow, how did I not get value here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they go, hey, he's always got it, right? When he
Mhm.
bets big, he's always got it. And over time, you've been able to shift that into like, okay, like I might not fire a ton of bluffs, but I can take a couple of spots here and they're going to give me too much respect. Well, great. Let me fire out a huge bet here because they're folding too often when I have the goods.
Right.
So finding that balance in the image,
Yep.
I think pretty good.
2023 would have been really bad if I hadn't bluffed. Like if I tried to play the way I did in 2022, in
Yeah.
2023, I might have lost money actually. Bluffs were
Mhm.
almost all of the money I made the entire year.
Really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Seriously.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
good. All right, let's talk the mental game of poker just a little bit here.
Okay.
I think this is
My
important.
favorite part.
Yes,
Truly,
because
my favorite part. Yeah.
I think it's a huge factor and something that we focus on probably the least. We spend so much time on ranges and hands and bet sizes and hand reading and all these things, and they're very important aspects of the game. But if our mind is broken, if we don't have our absolute best, it puts us so far behind. So what stands out to you? What is like the biggest thing that helps your game to where you don't break down mentally when you show up to the table and something goes wrong?
Uh, okay. Well, first of all, I only ever bring 3 buy-ins.
Okay.
So
Great start.
I think I lost 2 buy-ins maybe 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
Not even sure I've ever gotten to the third buy-in. Uh, I mean, you should ask yourself whether you're playing poorly or whether you just got unlucky. I mean, I do remember one
Yeah.
case.
Yeah.
Oh, geez, like what's this? Probably like 4 years ago. There was a young guy. He came into the game. He bought in. He lost set over set, and then literally, like in a situation where like everybody would lost everything,
Yeah. It's getting
and
cooler. Yeah.
and then 3 hands later, it happened again.
Oh,
And I'd never seen this guy before.
sure.
Uh,
And he's down $600 like that.
and he took it really well,
Yeah.
right? And then he just got up and left, and it was like, okay, like, I mean, if the guy had more money and he might have been a very good player. Like I have no way of knowing. I didn't get to see him play, but
Yeah.
I mean, I would have lost the money exactly the same way,
Yeah. No control over those spots
right?
for sure.
But I think for most people, like, if you lose in chess, what usually happens is people make mistakes, and then you recognize you made a mistake, and then your focus is divided between trying to figure out what you're trying to do next and the mistake that you just made,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
think poker is exactly the same way.
Yeah.
And so
I
what's
agree
going
with
to
that.
happen is it's going to get worse and worse. So your chances of making a mistake get compounded as you make mistakes.
I totally agree with you. So
So
let's say you've just lost 2 buy-ins.
yeah,
What question are you asking yourself?
uh,
Or like
okay.
how are you assessing? You're saying, "Hey, am I playing good poker?" But how are you really assessing that?
Well, okay. So I would sort of go back and think through the hand, and not whether I would have done something different, because of course you probably would have done something different with the benefit of hindsight, but you don't
For
have
sure.
that benefit, right?
Right.
So
Right.
what I would do is I'd ask myself, did it seem like I played the hand reasonably, and do I feel like I can still play? And
How do you recognize tilt in yourself? Because I think that's something that took me a while to learn, where I would take a bad beat, right? And
right,
I wouldn't recognize in myself that I had, for example, expanding my range, or when I was targeting a player, that player beat me and when they shouldn't have, so I should play
mhm.
against them more. Like how are you identifying that tilt, or what stands out to you? How do you Let me ask you this question. How do you tilt most commonly if you're going to?
Hmm. I don't think I really tilt at the poker table.
Never? Come on, Tom.
I would say if anything, well, okay, I would say I guess this is a form of tilt. If I feel like I'm losing, I'll play even tighter.
Okay. Okay.
So
Throwing hands away that maybe you shouldn't. Is that what you mean?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So like let's say I'm up front with, again, let's say I'm in middle position with pocket sevens and
Yeah.
things have been going really poorly. Like I'll just throw it
Just
away.
fold. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure.
If it gets to such a point where I'm like, oh my God, like I got pocket jacks and I don't want to play them,
Yeah. Yeah.
then it's time to
That's
get
real.
up and go home
That's
for
real
sure.
ugly.
Right.
Yeah. I
Um,
think for me, I've had some moments where I don't know if you've had this, but I can't leave the table. I'm stuck, and I hate that I'm stuck. And I'm like, I can't leave the table stuck. I can't admit my defeat. That was early
oh,
on. That was
wow.
my biggest mistake. Was I had so much ego of like I can't. And part of this was like, hey, we talked about it. We have a separate bankroll, right? I can't
Right.
lose this money, and then I don't have
Mhm.
anything to reload with. So I need to like stay here and grind this back to a win. And I would sit at that table and sit at that table, and then
Wow.
4 or 5 hours go by, and now I'm down 3 buy-ins instead of one,
Right.
or whatever, but or maybe I didn't even lose that much more, but I would just stay there and like tired and desperate, and it was just not good poker. But I had this feeling of like I must get back to even. I think chess has fortified your mind in a way that I never had before, because you've never experienced that where you're just chasing that like.
I There have been I can think about a couple of situations where I'm just like, I got to get out of here, but
Okay,
never. I'm going
okay,
to sit here and keep playing.
okay. Well,
Right. I mean, maybe
I'm
my
I'm a
mind is
DJ, I'll admit
compromised.
it.
Well, maybe I recognize that my mind is compromised and it's just
Okay,
time to
yeah,
leave. But I
yeah.
don't think I've ever played. I'm sure I've never. I mean, I'm way more likely to just I play, but I get up and I say thank you for the game and I get out of there. I remember once I was my wife was playing slots or something. I went to go see her and she looked at me and she said, "What's wrong?" And
Oh, okay.
I just lost a couple of fine. She's like, she doesn't care.
Right,
But
right.
she's like, okay, but you look like you look like you've been hit by a truck or something.
Sure.
So
So
she knows
mentally
me
you
better than
felt
anybody.
okay, but on your face was like,
Yeah, but she's like,
"Oh,
"Oh,
man, I just
something is
got wrecked."
horribly wrong. Like, are you
Yeah.
okay? Like, should we go to the hospital or something? No, no, no. I'm all right.
No.
But but she's but she
Yeah.
was like, "Well, but you don't look like yourself.
Yeah.
And so
Mm.
um, I mean maybe, but I got up and left. I
Yeah.
mean, you gotta get up and leave. It's gonna cost you a lot of money to stick around.
Yeah. All right, so Dr. HJ in the comments saying, "I've done that before. Keep playing till I get ahead." Is that something you used to do a lot, or is it something that you've been able to kinda push aside? It's something you used to do? Maybe a little mix of both. I know it's pretty rare for me, but I definitely, on occasion, I still get that little glimpse where it's like I start just being like, it's 11. I should probably leave by 12. I'm up like $1,000, and then like 11:50, I lose a huge hand and I'm down 100, and I'm like, all right, let me just get that
Ooh.
100 back, then I'll go, and I'll sit there. I'll still kind of extend a little farther, but I think it's much more under control than it was. Um, all right, so Tom, I'm going to ask you this too. So we're talking about recognizing it in yourself.
Mhm.
But let me ask you this: how often do you recognize in another player that they are kind of falling apart at the table, or you can see their mental game breaking down, and you say, "Okay, wait a second, that's something I can take advantage of, or should be paying attention to."
I would say people are I don't think people how do I put this? If somebody looks angry, they're probably angry,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Pretty fair. Yeah.
I don't think people are that good at acting that,
I
you
agree with
know,
you.
that they're um, certainly. I would assume that somebody that's outwardly angry is probably at least somewhat compromised.
Yeah.
Um, so that part's pretty easy to recognize. But you know, there are a lot of people. I think you know, you go to the. This is the really interesting thing about poker, right? I go to play, and let's say I see some senior guy. There's this one senior guy. I didn't know him very well. Anyway, we happen to be sitting beside each other. We're chatting, and he's telling me about, I got a teacher's pension. My teacher's pension pays me, blah. I got X million of dollars. I'm thinking to myself, this guy's rich. Like,
What are you doing in a
if
1-2
he,
game?
if he loses like
Yeah.
50 buy-ins, he's
Mhm.
still gonna be fine, right?
Mhm.
So for him, it was just like kind of a social thing. There was no way he'd ever lose enough money that he's gonna care, and so
Wait,
I mean,
I gotta ask you a quick question though. Is this
sure.
dude like, is he dressed to the nines, or is he like showing up in sweatpants and he's
He
got an
is
old
he
flip
is showing
phone and
up.
he's like,
You would not be able to tell him from
okay,
like he just normal dressing guy, no suit, nothing like that. Retiree.
so he could be making it up, or he could be wealthy. Okay,
Yeah. I know a little bit about him now. I don't
okay,
think he was making it up.
okay, no,
So
okay, right on.
I mean, he didn't tell me he was a multimillionaire or anything, but I kind of put together that he could lose this money. It's not going to be a problem.
Right,
So I would say in general, you know, you want to know who cares about the money and who doesn't. If somebody
really
cares
good.
about the money, they're likely to play way too tight. If they don't care about the money, they're likely to play loose. This guy wasn't super loose, but he was like, it was clear he could lose that pot and it's not going to change his life.
Oh yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Whereas some of the people, I mean, it's a casino, right? It's kind
yeah.
of, I
Oh
can
yeah,
understand why some people don't want to spend time in the, in the casino because it does, you know, you got people that are, uh, barely hanging on sort of
yep,
thing. And you're
yep.
trying to take their money,
Right,
right? I got to take somebody's last dollar. They're
right,
adults. They agree to play,
right.
right? But for some people, they're just like, oh, I can't do it.
That's because you're the silent terror of Windsor, right? No emotion, just a straight killer. Okay, I would say one of the things I've noticed in opponents that uh, I think definitely important. There's a guy that I can think of who I know where his money comes from. It's not money he's earned, and it splashes around that table. Like when he sits down, it's like, oh, let's go. Here
Right,
it
right.
comes. Money's going to start flowing. And I think that's important to know. But then I think just recognizing, like, one of the things that really shows up that I notice is like the range starts stretching out. Like that guy
Mm,
played a hand, it didn't go well. He's back in there with the next hand, then the next one, then the next one, and things start to implode. The
right.
mistake leads to another mistake, leads to another mistake, and all of a
Mm.
sudden, I've seen guys get just this mountain of chips, and you're like, those chips, like we got to get them quick because they are not. This seriously, I've had I've
They
had
need a new home.
conversation. Oh yeah, it's like
You're gonna
those
get a new
will
home. It better be my home. Yeah.
they will not be on this table long in his
Right.
possession.
Yep.
So how do we take him from that stack to here before he's gone?
Right.
So
But then
uh
that affects the way everybody else plays too, though. Right.
yeah.
So like one of the things you can do is recognize that, okay, if the people around you realize that player X is doing this thing and they're changing the way they're playing, you could try targeting those players rather than targeting X directly.
Really good point. Really good
Right.
point. When they all start opening and attacking that
Yeah.
guy, and
Yeah.
they're coming in light, get
Yep.
that 3-bet going, get that 4-bet going.
Yep. And
Yeah.
just be like, oh, okay, time to scoop in, especially non-showdown stuff, right? Or doesn't see a
Yeah.
flop. I mean, that's amazing. You can win piles of money and they never see your cards.
One of my favorite hands was this exact scenario, and not one of my favorite ones of all time, but it was a great hand. So this basically the same thing's unfolding. We got a loose player. There's a guy at the table who's a very competent player. I see him all the time, and he's willing to make the moves. Makes the 3-bet. It comes back around to me. I have ace 5 of diamonds, and I'm like, this dude. I know what he's doing. He's 3-betting because he's attacking this guy. I'm going for the 4-bet. There's no way he's calling. I
Right.
4-bet him out of position with ace 5. and it's like for half my chips for the 4-bet, right?
Wow.
And it was a big 4-bet. He ends up making the call, and I'm like, oh crap, I stepped in it. Maybe he wasn't attacking that dude. Maybe he just woke up with it. We go to the flop, and it's like, I want to say it's deuce 4 of diamonds with something else. So I have a like gutter ball to the straight flush, right?
Right.
And I'm like, all right, I just shove all the chips in. Like, hey, I've got a shot at the nuts, and like I can't fold. Let's go.
Yep.
And sure enough, the turn is the straight flush. Like, oh, got completely rewarded for
so easy.
Yeah, so simple when you just like make the move, step in it, and then get rewarded anyway.
Yep.
It was awesome. So,
and that's another thing too, right? Is that when things are going well, it seems like you know everything, and when things are going horribly, it seems like you know nothing. But really, like the result of say 75 hands or even 200 hands, that doesn't mean anything. Like it's not even. I mean, talk about sample size. It's a sample size of like nothing.
Yeah, really. So small over the course of your career. Yeah,
no,
absolutely. And I think one of the things too that is really easy to get caught up in is like we talk about winner's tilt from time to time, where stuff starts coming in easy, and you're like, oh, dude, like this is just like I can't lose tonight, and then your range expands on the other side of it because you're like, okay, well, hey, I have Jack 10 offsuit, and I'm in middle position, but I've just won like 4 hands in a row, so of course I'm going to open.
Sure.
Right. It doesn't matter that the guy behind me looks like he's ready to get involved and he's a really good opponent and I'm out of position. Like you're just going for it. And the next thing you know, you're bleeding chips back to your opponents.
Yeah.
So, all right. Any other thoughts on the mental game? Anything else that comes to your mind before we move on? I got another question for you. If not,
not offhand. No.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. So tell me about, I guess this is going to be, we'll touch kind of last thing on mental game. How are you dealing with like a big loss early on? Because I know I had a few and they were really like when I first started out, that big loss just felt devastating. Or maybe you just came in and you just won like 100 sessions in a row. You felt great.
Yeah, when I first started playing poker, I never had, I mean, never had a losing session, but I didn't like year 1, I made money. Year 2, I made money. Year 3.
Oh, good for you.
And I will say, like I honestly, like looking back on it, like years 1 and 2 especially, I did nothing. I really did nothing.
You just like folded forever and waited for the nuts.
I just waited until okay, I got pocket queens.
Yeah,
you know, guy made it 15. 4 people called. I made $100. Everybody folded.
Right? And you just pocket $60. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, okay. And then I'll wait another 2 hours for this to happen. The key thing, I think, is you can't get bored.
Oh, man. Yes.
It is incredible. More human suffering, I think, in the history of the world is caused by people being bored.
There's a great quote by I'm gonna misquote it, but it's by Buffett, and he says that the stock market, I think it's so true of poker too, but stock market is a vehicle for delivering money from those who are impatient to those who are patient. And I think poker is the exact same way. Like if you are patient at the poker table, like your strategy is extraordinarily boring to play queens plus when you first start, but it is profitable. If you just sit there and you fold and you're like, okay, I'm not going to get involved, I will be more patient. There's guys that I've heard stories of. They'll put on headphones, listen to music. They just wait. They just wait and they wait and they wait and they wait. And they're like, okay, it's queens. I'm going to win. And they'll fold pocket 10s, pocket jacks. Like, I don't know. I can't personally do that. But I know that it's a winning strategy. Like if you look at your equities and what's happening, you can't screw it up. So
yeah, I mean, it's not a good strategy, but it's not an optimized strategy.
Yeah,
but it's hard to mess it up. It almost certainly will make money at 1-2, right? You're sure. I mean, you got to find something else to do with your time while you're sitting there folding, though.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to just fold straight. So Dr. HJ getting in there saying, I can't deal with the big losses. I stick to the 2-5 and lower. When I played 5-10 and would have a 3K losing session, it would bother me too much. Yeah, those hurt. And especially depending on how much of your bankroll it is. So we were talking about like how wealthy a person is. I think your bankroll, how strong it is and how deep it is depends a lot. Like if you've got $3,000 and you're buying into a 1-3 game, you can buy in plenty of times, right? You got 10 buy-ins, you're going to feel very comfortable buying in 300. You go to a 5-10 game with that $3,000, you get stacked twice with that, like that guy who got 2 sets. Okay, good night.
I might be going home
over.
now.
I'm broke. So good play with you guys. Yeah. So I think that's good. I think for me, when I was first losing, I think one of the key takeaways was to not attach poker to who I am, like to my identity, to not allow it to be, I have like worth or value because of poker, or I am this kind of poker player because of my results. And being willing to be comfortable with the process and go, okay, that was a loss. How big were my mistakes and what can I do differently, rather than, oh my gosh, if I'm not good, then what am I doing? And if I'm just sitting here like, I have no ability to be good in the future.
Right.
I think instead just figuring out, okay, what's next?
Mm-hmm.
What's next? And we talk about it all the time on the channel, but just that mindset of I'm never best, always learning, never best, always learning.
Yep.
Taking that, I think really, really helped me. And just one more thing I'll add to that, when you take a big loss early on, you want to go take several hours at the table. So they say you should be putting in probably 2 to 3 hours of study for every hour at the table early on. I totally agree with that. And if I take a big loss, even today, I'm like, okay, let me get away and think about poker without chips at risk before I get back to the table and get re-engaged.
Sure. And if you want to play the equivalent, like a lot cheaper, if it's legal where you're playing, you could always play online. Like I would say, somebody playing like say 5 cent, 10 cent online, the players are, in my opinion, I mean, I play 5 cent, 10 cent, and 10 cent, 25 cent online, or even 2 cent, 5 cent online. A lot of the players there are much better than most of the players playing 1-2 live.
Yeah.
Because they get to see way more hands, right? The kind of people that are going to be sitting behind a computer playing poker, probably on average, are going to be at least computer savvy, so probably are going to be smarter than average people. Probably put in a little bit more work, right? Because they're comfortable with computers.
Sure. I think the thing that online poker does is it makes your opponents, it allows them to be more patient, because those hands are showing up faster.
Coming all the time.
Yeah. So you can fold and go, hey, it's 30, it's a minute till my next hand, instead of like, I fold and I got to sit here and watch the guy, across from me, look at his cards and think and cut out chips. And like, that drives people nuts when they're impatient. Whereas online, I think they can go, okay, I can wait a minute. So
can I tell you a patient story?
Yeah, please do. Hit it.
There's a guy at the poker room, and I only ever seen this guy twice, but the first time he seemed like a very, very impatient guy. And then the second time he showed up, he sat down, he wanted to buy some chips off the dealer. Now in our poker room, you have, for the first buy-in, you have to go to the cage, right? The cage is literally, I would say 20 steps away from where he was sitting, maybe 25 steps. There was nobody in line. Okay. And the guy just got up and walked out. He wasn't willing to go to the line.
I will not be mistreated.
Like a minute, right? Because he's going to be first in line. There's literally nobody else in line, right? The whole thing would have taken him, like, let's say, a minute and a half to do. And the guy was so impatient, he wasn't willing to do that.
Huh.
Right? And these are the kind of people that you're going to be potentially playing in. Now, he's obviously like the absolute far case, right?
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people, they're complaining like, I've gotten pocket pairs 3 times this hour and I didn't make a set. People are complaining. I'm like, like, why would you think that you're going to make a set? Like, what, 1 time in 3, 2 times in 3? Like, know the math at least, like basic math.
Or I've had kings, or I've had ace king, and I've had this and that, and my pocket pairs didn't hold, and I lost a huge pot with ace, just like you're saying, and I had no control. I think that the excuses come rather than the learning moment. Right. All right, so Dr. HJ, I know this is off topic. Since you brought up Warren, I'm in the middle of transitioning to day trading. Ooh, wild. Been playing poker for 30 years, but this is my better route in life. That's so cool. So the channel is yeah, that's really what this is all about. But I don't do the day trading thing. So I take my
Right.
poker winnings and I invest them in the stock market, but I don't do the day trading. So I'm curious how I've heard so much of, man, people just get crushed day trading when they first start out. Has that been your experience? I'm going to move on. I'm going to ask another question of Tom, but I want to hear your answer. So entitled
I'm kind of
mindset,
curious
not going to
too.
work in poker. Yeah, Dr. HJ, go ahead and tell us what you're thinking. We'll get back to that. Okay, and then let me hear your rules for walking away. This is one I meant to ask you when you were talking about walking away. You said 3 buy-ins, but you said well,
I
I
never
guess
lost more than
you
2.
you kind of filled me in, I guess, if you're
Yeah.
like, "Hey, I'm not playing well." So,
Right.
okay, we did talk
Or
about
at
that.
least I'm not sure. I would say if you're not sure whether you're playing well, then you should probably err on the side of caution and get the heck out of,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
exit.
It's Tommy Angelo talks about taking a break once an hour. Just get up, use the bathroom,
Right.
grab a drink and assess with your
Hmm.
brain.
Hmm.
And it's amazing when I first started doing that, I did it just because it was in his book, and I'm like, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. But it is amazing how often you leave the table. You don't want to leave the table,
Right.
and then when you do, you go, oh wow, that like I feel that how much I'm trying to get back into this game and force
Hmm.
something. It,
Hmm.
it is a good way to check yourself. All right, so let me ask: biggest mistake you would make early on?
Biggest mistake I would make
I
early
mean,
on.
I would say you cut out probably the primary mistake, which is getting involved too often and with too many hands. But is there one mistake? I'll let you think about
I
that.
would say overestimating my opponents,
Oh, okay. Ooh, that's not.
overestimating them. So like I would be
Yeah.
like thinking about, it's sort of like a variation of fancy play syndrome, except the fancy play, I'm like, if I were that person, would I know that he knows that I know that he, and then you're like, okay,
The
but
one.
now I'm not even sure what I'm asking myself.
So
So
yeah, just giving them credit. Like this dude is playing he's playing games with
yeah,
me,
like
and
he knows that this guy is doing this, right?
yeah,
And this guy is doing this. So this guy, and then at the end, it's like, oh, Queen Jack suited. It's my lucky hand or whatever. It's just like, okay, I'm an idiot. Like, why did I? Or there were hands where like some guy is 3-barreling, and
yeah,
I remember this one hand. The guy was he 3-barreled into 3 people, and on the river, one of the guys called him, and I was in last position, and I folded. I think I folded 2 pair, and then like one guy had 1 pair and the other guy had like a slightly better, and I'm like, oh my god, I just
well,
lost this huge pot,
yeah,
right? And I'm just sitting
yeah.
there like, like, what an idiot I am. But I'm thinking to myself, like, would he really 3-barrel into 3 of us? And this guy is calling on the river, and like, what is going on? And oh,
Right, you're giving him credit for quality play. If maybe it's not even there.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
like,
That's really good. I would say it does happen, but I wouldn't say that's one of the more common mistakes people make. So that's interesting that's where it's coming from.
yeah.
I think one of the things that I really, and most players struggle with this, but is you get attached to a hand when you're early on, right? Like you covered this a
Oh
little
yeah,
bit,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it's like, yeah, it's my aces, it's my kings, or especially I think a hand where like you would hit ace king and there'd be 2 pair on the flop. But by the river, there's 4 to a flush. And you're like, I have 2 pair.
Yes,
I hit it. Did he
yeah.
really hit like you just can't get away. Or you flop the set and you pile all the money in
Oh, those are the
along the
worst.
way. And then at the river, you're like, you almost know you're no good, but you do it
Yeah,
just out of habit, chuck it in because you're like, you
right.
can't always. Yeah.
Like, how could this run out be so bad? It's like the
Yeah.
bottom, whatever, 2% of runouts or
Yeah.
something for this particular hand.
But
Yeah.
but when I was early on, I always found a bluff they could have. I'm like, oh, this guy, he's trying to level me here because the fourth
Yep.
card showed up for the flush. It's like, oh,
Right.
I just need a full. All right, so Dr. HJ, you were talking about day trading. Let's hear the answer here. Yes, it took me almost 3 years to become profitable. If you're a poker player, you're going to be profitable day trading. It's just a matter of time. I have heard that. I'm curious where you would start. Oh, okay. Well, I should read all of it before I ask you where to start. Check out Johnny Vibes. Did an interview with a former poker player, Jamie Rosenthal. Average poker player now making millions day trading.
Well,
Woo! All right, so Dr. HJ, how close are you to your millions? Richest trader in the world was a poker pro too. Yes. I'm gonna say I'm going to say you're into your first half mil. How does that sound? Are we close? and you're watching Tom and Sean discuss poker online, even though you're worth all that money.
Yeah.
All right. Let's
I
let
do
me
think that
see.
good games players, though, would probably make good investors, and probably poker players would be amongst the very best.
I actually I love that. I love these comments because I'm I was actually scripting out a video today that I'm planning on putting out that's talking about this very thing. Like if you are good at poker, you should be looking into the markets because your reward is higher. And well, my form of investing is like the value investing, slow Warren Buffett
Right.
style. Let it return a dividend to you, all that stuff. You have a way of producing something. You have a higher return possible, and then a way of producing something that then just sits there and works for you, so you're not having to do the work. So
Well, the
that
stock market is like a casino that instead of taking your money, on average, is going to give you money, right? To stay in the casino.
yeah, I mean it's a zero sum game still at the end of the day, which is interesting. But so often, if you're doing it right,
Well, it's not
you
as
have a good
I don't think
chance
it's
of
a
something.
zero sum game. It's a positive. If I put my money into the, let's say, S&P 500, I just
Mhm.
left it there and I went to sleep for 20 years and I came back, I'm going to have more money than when I came in. Now, it might not be a way to optimize my return, but um,
But it is zero sum. I mean, in order for you to realize your gain, somebody has to be willing to make a purchase of your sale, right?
well, okay. But I mean, like over time, the companies get bigger, people get quote free shares, right? Dividends. So you're
Yeah,
it,
it is returning to you. I guess the trading portion is zero sum. The
right,
dividend portion is a little different. You're right about
right.
that. You're right about that. So, okay. So, no, not close. I'm up to about 20K. Hey, 20K. Nice job, sir. That's awesome. I trade for prop firms, so I will get more capital maybe next year. Wow, nice. Very cool. That is awesome. That is very cool. I have a friend who is doing that out of he's been doing it for a few years now and just getting his stake and getting going into the day trading stuff. He's really nice to run charts by. I'm assuming you're doing a lot of charting stuff and really watching. What is your typical time frame on a day trade? Curious to hear that. Let me see. I think I have one more question for you, Tom, and then
Okay.
we'll
I
we'll
just got one question. How much? I wonder
yeah,
how
yeah,
much you
yeah.
need to start with before the frictional cost of trading ends up taking
Ooh,
away most of your profit, but
there you go.
or a significant amount of your profit. Like, what would you consider the minimum acceptable amount?
Dr. Aisha, you did not realize that you were showing up to be interviewed on the live stream.
Yeah, that's it.
Welcome our new surprise guest.
That's it.
Let's see. All right, let me see. I think I have one more for you. So let me go through my questions one more time.
Sure. This was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. What? Okay, here we go. Here we go. This is the last one that I had left out.
Oh, okay.
And what is a good game and how can you tell? And this kind of goes to your point of overestimating your opponents, but
Mm.
what is a good game and how can you tell?
Uh, okay. Lots of laughing. Um, People interacting. There's going to be a lot of games. I'm kind of quiet guy at the poker table, and that's a problem I think because people assume that I'm uninterested in like I like to hear people's stories.
Yeah.
Right? A
Yeah.
lot of I mean, the poker table. There's like farmers, people in various trades I know nothing about. You know,
Yeah.
they'll tell stories and I'll listen to their story, ask them a couple questions. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say you want tables where people are laughing, where they're having a good time. If people are drinking, but not too much.
Yeah. I would agree with that. That
Um,
the drunk game, how many drunk games have you sat in?
Not too many, but
Okay.
it's kind of interesting, right? Because drinking can bring out the worst
Yes.
or magnifies whatever you are, right? So like if the person is generally a happy-go-lucky person, then probably they're going to be more happy-go-lucky. But if they're kind of a surly
Totally agree with
person,
you.
they're going to be more surly. And you don't want a game where, like, if even there's one person that's really surly,
Yeah.
that can really
Oh,
put a damper.
totally
I mean, it's
agree.
like going to a party and you got one person that's like,
Yeah.
real jerk, right?
Right. People have lampshades on their head, and that guy is naked and throwing tables. And
yeah. And people are just like, I
right.
don't.
Right. Okay,
So,
that guy's not fun. Yeah.
so you
No,
want that?
I've been in some drunk games that are really interesting. I think there's a variety, like a spectrum of drunk games you can get into where some are there's like a sweet spot almost where like
Mm-hmm.
people are mellowed out, they're having a good time, they're laughing, they're having fun.
Yep.
And then it starts to shift, and then
Yeah.
people get like you can see that just things change to where now I'm stuck and I'm angry. But that sweet spot is like people are having fun and the chips are flowing. So
Right.
I'm with you on that. So yeah, like some mild drinking I think is usually a good sign.
I think, yeah, you want it where, uh, okay, so in terms of age, it kind of depends on how you want to play. I would say, in general, when I first started playing No Limit Texas Hold'em in the casinos, I assumed that anybody below the age of 30 was going to be really good,
Okay.
because I just figured, like, okay, these guys are going to use computer stuff. I'm not very good with the computer. They're going to use computer stuff. They're going to know all the things. And I would say in
So how wrong
general,
were you?
well, I would say maybe 70% of the time they're amongst the absolute worst players at the
Sure.
table.
I would
And the
agree
other
with that.
30% of the time they're amongst the absolute best players at the
Yep.
table.
Yep.
So if you're playing as young people, you really got to watch, because they're either going to be, at least in my case, they're going to be much, much better than me, or they're going to be much, much worse.
Yeah.
And you can probably tell pretty quickly. With the older people, it's going to be more, like, once they get past 70 or whatever, they're going to be pretty predictable, but you're not going to
Yeah.
win a lot of money against them.
Yep. I agree
But
with
it'll
that.
be pretty predictable money.
Yeah, I would say the game is like if you get into a game with like say 7 people or OMCs at the table. I've
Yeah.
played that a few times.
Yeah.
And it's not terrible. It's not a super exciting game to play in, but it is profitable because it's so predictable.
Right.
You can pretty easily take advantage of a lot of things.
Mhm.
I think when you get in with a bunch of young people, if you notice at the table, again, we were talking drinking and laughing and all that stuff, but
Yeah.
I think really paying attention to the game, like when I went down to Texas and played at the lodge, I think this was really apparent. I sat at their like their 1-2 game or whatever, and their 1-2 plays pretty big for 1-2, but
Mhm.
it's people are just kind of passively playing, lots of limping and calling and stuff. You get to their
Right.
1-3 and it plays like 2-5. It's almost always straddled. But the
Mhm.
thing you notice is, hey, there's an open. It goes fold, 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 open, 3-bet, 4-bet, fold, 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 no flop,
Right.
next hand, and like that. The moment you start to see lots of 3-betting, very few limps, very few just like flat calls, I think you can recognize, hey, I'm in a tough game. And so
Right.
depending on where your skill level's at, you can assess from there. Like, okay, am I comfortable here? Should I switch tables? All that
Mhm.
stuff. But
Mhm.
I think 3-bet frequency is probably one of the biggest things you'll want to look for. All right, Dr. HJ, going back to you here. Let's see. You don't need any money, really. Interesting. You can demo trade, and with the firms, you can take a test for 100 and get 15K in capital. Really interesting.
Well,
1% pass and get constant payouts. Wow. Right
hmm.
on, man. Well, that's cool. I'm gonna look into that at least a little bit. I don't know how I feel. I don't think my skills are there, but that was fun. I'm gonna give just a quick opportunity, audience. If you have any topics, anything on your mind that you would want to talk about, any questions or anything you'd want to hear from Tom or myself before we get out of here tonight, go ahead. I'll give you just a minute right now. All right, Tom. So you were talking about playing Detroit soon, weren't you? You were saying you might make the trip over to Detroit.
Yes. Yes.
When is that on the books? Do you know when that's going to be?
I do not know yet. It will not be in the winter. That's for sure. Um,
Just too
uh,
nasty the conditions.
yeah.
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 This is one of the nicer parts of Canada this time of year. It's still not all that nice. I don't. Anyone out there that is thinking of visiting Canada anytime in the winter, you better like snow.
There's a reason you guys are good at hockey, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Right on. All right. Well, let's see. If you want more info, I got you. Yeah, sure. Dr. Ashe, I'll let's see. If you would, I've got my email is listed on Here, I'll just post it in here. I'm gonna post my email
So
for you.
password.
But yeah, I would love to get some info for you.
So it's like the firms are sort of checking to see if somebody had. I mean, it seems like the sort of thing nowadays. People, it used to be to get education was expensive and there were sort of barriers, right? But now for a lot of things, you can just become an expert by reading stuff online if you know where to look. Like poker, for example, I'm sure there's way more good poker players who have barely played any poker relative to, people from, say, well, before the computer age, right? And it wouldn't be just poker. It would be like all sorts of things where people would become self-educated to a pretty high level.
To become profitable, yeah.
Yeah. So like these firms, maybe they just search out people that have a knack for something.
Yeah.
Why not? If it doesn't cost them much or anything.
Tom, I just found one more question I meant to ask you.
Oh, okay, good.
And it's a would you rather. So we're not really going into like
All right.
poker advice.
Okay.
But what sounds better to you? Being
Mhm.
under bankrolled in a game full of maniacs, or you're
Ooh.
properly bankrolled, but you're playing against a bunch of crushers, like you can tell they're good.
Under bankrolled against a bunch of maniacs, you're almost certainly going to lose all your money.
But
right?
the potential upside
is huge. But a bunch of crushers?
A bunch of crushers, yeah.
Well, you're almost certainly going to lose.
Right.
Okay, so choice B, you're almost certainly going to lose some money.
Right.
Choice A, I guess, is kind of like lotto. So so some percentage of. So if there were really bad maniacs, I guess I would rather be. If there were really bad maniacs, I would definitely rather be under bankrolled against them, assuming that I can get more money somehow.
I guess I guess I'm not thinking like terrible maniacs, just those hyper aggressive wild men that the variance is super high, but
I'd rather play the
tough
crushers.
spots. Would you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
at
least
it's more predictable.
Yeah, and also like even if you lose, you're paying to learn something. If I play against crazy maniacs, what am I learning?
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
that's true.
I'm never going to play like them. I'm not sure I should. Maybe I should, but I know myself well enough to know like I do not have that creative energy to do that.
So you would almost rather play. I mean, it makes sense, right, with your chess background. But you would almost rather play the mental game of like, let me try to get a little bit better. No, I'm going to lose some money, and in the process, I'm hopefully gaining ground and learning some plays and being able to like logically go, okay, I might have lost that hand, but here's why and here's what he did. Versus a guy where you just have to plug your nose and throw the chips in and hope for the best.
Just like, okay, I'll put it all in. Yeah,
I think I'm going to agree with you. I think just the thought of like those wild games can be really fun, but they can be so mentally devastating when you're playing against a complete spaz. And when they get on a roll and they're just dominating you, it just feels absolutely awful. Absolutely.
That might be the one thing. I don't know if it puts me on tilt, but it's okay. I want to say it's kind of like envy, where you think to yourself like, oh, like when I get 8-5,
yeah,
right, and then and they flop 2 pair, and you're like, I could play 8-5 all day, and I will never flop 2 pair.
Right. It's just not going to happen.
And you're just like, that might be the one thing that does kind of tilt me in the sense of like I'll go home or take the bus home. Like I take the bus. Very zen to take the bus home, by the way. And then I sit there thinking about like all the hands
process.
And I'll be like just sitting there like, oh my God, this guy like he won 4 hands in a row playing. He played 8-5 offsuit and then he played 10-7 offsuit and he hit 2 pair trips. Made a straight, and I'm just like, I could do this for 100 years. I would never win 4 hands in a row.
Yeah, and in those moments, I think it's easy to question, like, do I not know how to play poker? This guy has a mountain of chips in front of him. He's playing every hand. Like, maybe I just need to be more aggressive. And of course, he's just on a hot streak.
There was a hand last time I played. Right? There was an enormous pot. It was like maybe the biggest pot I've ever seen. Like playing 1-2, it got up to like it was about $1,400, and there was a dude with five. He had 5 deuce suited. He made a straight flush. His opponent on the river, he rivered. I think did he river it? No, he turned a straight flush. Well, his opponent turned. His opponent had ace-4 offsuit and made a full house. And then on the river, the third player made the nut flush.
Jeez.
Right. So the 3 hands were 5. I think it was 5 deuce or 5-3 offsuit, ace-4 offsuit, 5-3 suited. Sorry, 5-3 suited, ace-4 offsuit, and king-queen offsuit. And the 3 hands they made were, one guy made the ace-king high flush, one guy made aces full of 4s, and the other guy made a straight flush. And I'm just like, I wouldn't be in with any of these hands, I don't think, all the way to the river.
Right.
2 of them, I wouldn't even have made it to the flop. And the third one, like the guy called like a hopeless, huge bet to draw to his nut flush, 1 card nut flush, when there was already a pair on the board and the other guy already had a straight flush.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, how can I lose to these people? How is it possible?
Yep. Right. And I think what's crazy too is like sometimes we don't think about it, but everybody has their day, and some of those guys are going to go home and they're going to like, crawl into their trailer smelling like the back of an Applebee's, just like they don't have anything going for them in their life, but that one night was their night, So
yeah.
All right, we got a couple questions here. So Max EV got a question for you guys. Do you ever use Pio for live games? I'm assuming you're talking Pio Solver. Yeah, I do. I like to break down hands. I think what I find is that I typically want to play an exploitative game playing live, but Pio Solver helps me identify the exploits. And so sometimes it's nice to break the hand down and then to analyze like, okay, what if I bet small, how often does he need to be calling? Or if I bet large, how often does he need to be folding or whatever? Like I can identify maybe where the leaks are, and then I look to exploit those things. So yes, I use the Pio Solver, but I'm not using it to try to play GTO as much as I am using it to identify what are they most likely to be doing wrong, and how do I take advantage of that? And I think it's been very, very helpful. I would say one of the things it really helped me with early on when I first bought Pio Solver was it helped me to go, where am I overfolding? And I didn't realize how much I was overfolding, but I think there's almost like this early on, you tend to overcall. And then as you learn, like, oh, I'm losing money at the table. In order to win, I need to be willing to fold. I found myself in a place where I was overfolding to people's value hands, and then started to find the sweet spot where I was like, okay, so here's what I should be doing if they are balanced. They're not balanced, but they're probably unbalanced enough that I can find this middle ground. And so not call as wide as the solver, but not call so narrow that I'm folding too often. So that was really helpful. I thought.
Actually, you really bring up a really interesting point, because if you think about how the poker ecosystem works, right? You're going to have people, okay, let's say we all go down and play poker for the first few times. Almost everybody's going to play too loose, right? The first few times. The few people that don't, or that realize like, oh my God, like this guy over here is playing every third hand and he's losing like buy-in after buy-in. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's going to self-select for a group of people who are generally going to fold more than average. And then people sort of think like, okay, that is the way to win.
Yeah.
Right. And so you've already sort of self-selected for the group of people. And then, yeah, and you're absolutely right. Like I do the same thing. Like I realized like maybe a year ago, I was folding way too much.
Yeah.
But it had been working to the point where, it was like, okay, it was still profitable, but it's sure you can make a little bit of money, right? Which is good for a hobby. But if you want to make like real money, you're going to have to call down sometimes with hands that are not great in situations. But it kind of goes against, like you said, right? It kind of goes against sort of like you learn to do something quote properly, and then it turns out like properly is just wrong.
Right, because it's not taking the maximum advantage. I think that was probably the biggest lesson I learned with solvers, was that this is the optimal way to play in order to not be exploited.
Right.
But it is not the optimal way to play. Like if you have a spot where you're really able to give somebody a 50-50 decision, you're really able to make things like tough on them where it almost doesn't matter what they do. They can't really take advantage of you. There's value in that.
Mhm.
But often your play, if you take a different route, can be so advantageous versus what their mistakes are that it's just better to take that line and
Right.
not worry about it. Let's see. So, do you ever use it for a specific player to node lock and exploit him? I think what I do. So I really try to focus on two things. I focus on what causes them, where are they folding too much, and where are they calling too often. And when I'm at the table, I'm really trying to identify what kind of mistakes my opponent is making. It's actually funny. I played a late session with Adam, who is normally in here with us, and he, I ended up running a bluff in a spot that was extremely logical, right? So the board got very scary for the opponent, and a spot where he should have been absolutely terrified based on what the board was and what his hand was. So I put him on the right range, put him on the right hand, made a play that should have absolutely terrified him with a check raise and then a lead on the river, and he called. And afterwards, he kind of like gave me this nice advice and was like, "Hey, listen, you can't put a move on someone who doesn't know you're putting a move on them,
Right.
right? Like if they don't know what the move is that you're doing, it's not going to work." So,
Well, what do they say, right? You want to be one level above your opponents, right? But not more than one.
Exactly. Yep. And all he had was what is my hand? What is my hand? What is my
Right.
hand?
Yep.
No thought to what I had. So I'm playing
Right.
on the wrong level, to your point. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, well said. Let's see. And then Cap Teague 93. I usually play every hand, even if it sucks, if there's no pre-flop raise. Thoughts on that?
Ooh.
Love poker. All right. So one of the things you want to consider if you're going to play a lot of live poker is the rake. Tom, you have any? Let me ask before I dive into that. Do you have any thoughts on this? Or even if it sucks, there's no pre-flop raise. Are you going to play a hand?
No.
Okay. And my thought on it would be, go ahead and interrupt me if you have a thought. But when you're trying to beat the rake, you've got this really. The more hands you're involved in, just know that money's coming out of that pot every single time. And especially when you're limping, if you think about the amount of money, let's say they're taking like $5 out of the pot. We'll just keep it simple. And you're playing 1-3, you get like 5 limpers, $15 goes into that pot. 33% of that pot gets dropped, right? It's not going to be that much. It's usually not going to be $5 out of 15. But the point being, they're going to take at least 10% of it, right? And so money's getting pulled out of that every single time. So if you're involved and they're pulling 10% out of every single pot, it's really hard to just beat that over and over and over again, because your equity tends to not be high enough to win enough pots to overcome the rake. So what you tend to want to do is wait, be patient, find your big hand, get involved. And the more that you can, I'm not saying you want to just inflate the pot for the sake of inflating the pot, but I think you want to get involved, and then you want to be willing to play big pots, right? So there's an open, you're going to be willing to 3-bet, or if there's not, okay, I'm willing to, over a bunch of limpers, make a larger open. I'll take the pot down. If they want to give it to me, that's fine. And if they don't, now they're calling and they're making we're building a pot that by the river, you can be taking down a substantial pot with your pocket aces or whatever. Whereas if you just kind of limp and you're playing and the rake's stealing all your money, ultimately the house is just winning in that situation. I also, my other thought, well, Tom, tell me what you think. How much do you think you learn when you're just calling?
Okay. I would like to add 2 things. Okay.
Yeah, please
so number one is the guy who wins the most pots at the table is the guy that's paying the most rake.
Great.
Right?
Well said. Absolutely.
So you don't really want to be the guy that's winning the most. Like, it seems like, oh, well, a goal here is to win the most pots, but that's not really the case, right? Because the guy that wins the most pots is the guy that's playing the most pots. He's the person that ends up paying the most in rake, because the rake comes from the winning pots, right? So you're not really getting the right amount of win every time you win a pot. You're getting the correct amount of win minus whatever the casino takes. Whereas if you lose $10 on a hand, the casino doesn't tell you to give them an extra $1 because you lost. Okay, so number one is the loser. Like, what you want to do to try to avoid the rake, at least at our casino, I don't know about, but like a lot of them, is if no flop, no drop. Okay, so part 2 is if you can win a hand without a flop, you might not have to pay any rake. Or in my case, at our casino, you have to pay, I think, $1 for the promotion. But compared to,
even without a flop,
I think so.
Oh, okay.
But if you, okay, and then maybe I tip the dealer, like if the pot's not super small. But okay, so let's say it costs me $2, right? So it goes limp, 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 limp. I make it 20. Everybody folds. I win $7 or whatever, right? Whereas if I limp, and then it's like, okay, well, I can't win the pot by limping, and so so I'm gonna have to put in more money probably in order to win the pot, and the pot proportionally is gonna be smaller because every time someone puts some money in, the casino is gonna take some of that money. So you want to play like fewer hands, but play them, try to make them big. And if you can raise, especially if people respect your raises, if you can win a pot without there being a flop, like you're winning pots without having to pay the rake, which is amazing. Right? That's amazingly good.
It's huge. Cap Teague, so I'm going to read your comment here because I think it's really good. So when I get a winning hand, it usually offsets my stack depletion. Most of the time, I gain in the long run. If I don't hit or see something on the flop, I'll fold. I don't ever bluff. Maybe I suck at poker. Love it, though, especially online games. Right on, man. What I will say is, so Tom is talking about, we're both talking about the rake and that. Let me give you two thoughts. First of all, your stack depletion, if you remove your stack depletion, now when you win that big pot, it's way more profit, right? So there's, Tom was talking about this earlier. I don't know if you were here or not, but he was talking about, I'm willing to be, what did you say? I'm willing to be the most bored at the table or whatever. Like he's willing to be the most patient, right?
Yeah.
And so by being the most patient, Tom tends to come out ahead more than most people. And what I will say too is that something to consider is that we think, oh man, I could win so much. Like we call with, let's say, like 6-8 suited, right? And we're just like, yep, I'm going to throw the money in. Let's see what happens. I'm in middle position. Doesn't matter. Let's go. Well, sometimes 6-8 suited is going to win you a huge pot. You're going to flop the straight, or you're going to hit this flush, and no one else is going to have the flush, and they're going to pay you off, and you're going to scoop in a ton of chips, and it's going to be really profitable. On the other side of that, which is called implied odds. So the opposite side of that is reverse implied odds, which means you have 6-8 suited. You flop the flush, you pile all the money in, and the guy behind you has 9-10 suited, and he pulls all your chips in. And so now you're giving away a huge pot instead of winning a huge pot. So those are not that they completely offset each other, but they're gonna, on average, especially multi-way, you're gonna tend to lose just as many big ones as you are win those really big ones. And they might stand out differently in your mind, but you're probably not making any substantial progress by doing that. Whereas when you play this, like Tom's saying, where you take the betting lead, you get aggressive, you give yourself more ways to win the pot, and then you're able to scoop in more chips without the rake and without that like back and forth as much. So try to limit those big blinds that you're throwing away to see flops, and try not to pay rake to the casino more than you need to.
And that's one big difference between online and live, right? The rake is, online, the rake is tiny. So it's not really that big a consideration. It's still a consideration, but it's not that big a consideration. But live, it's a big consideration. At our poker room, I think it takes 10% of the pot up to $8, I think.
Up to 8, yeah, that's pretty high.
And so, like $80 pots, it's not that big, right? Sure. If somebody's making it 15 and 2 people call, we're already more than halfway there, and we haven't even seen any cards yet. Right. Yeah. It just hasn't even been a flop yet. So you're going to be paying a lot more in rake proportionally playing live than you will playing online. Right. So it impacts your decision making like quite a bit. Right. Now, maybe for people that play like 5-10 or whatever, if the rake's the same, it's pretty much irrelevant. But,
when you get to those 5-10 games and some of those big ones, you'll end up paying time, which is going to help you out as well, because now you can kind of play whatever you want,
right? But
you're just going to pay this fixed price, and you tend to be able to beat the rake either way. But let me give you just one more thing on this, is that when you tend to play like a tight, aggressive style, like what Tom is advocating. I tend to play that way as well as my baseline, and then I can adjust from there. I think we would both kind of suggest that. Is that fair to say, Tom? Play that tight, aggressive. Yeah. So you're going to wait for the premium cards. When you get them, now you're going to get aggressive. So you want to be putting money into the pot and growing it. And when you do that, you grow it beyond what it's going to be, what's going to be raked out of the pot. So you'll hit that cap, the $7 or the $8 or whatever it is. It's going to get pulled. Well, the rest of the money you're putting into the pot to pull from your opponent in that hand, there's no tax on it. There's no like money coming off the table. So that's you're able to beat the rake by getting those really big pots and getting involved. And I'm not saying to overplay necessarily, but just to in that spot be aggressive and take action. All in all, good stuff.
If you can't help yourself, then just do it on the cutoff and the button.
Yes, late position.
Right.
Your equity. We're going to close with this because we got to get running. But your equity will be realized at a much higher rate in late position because you will have the most information. So try to be playing as many hands as you can from the hijack, the cutoff, and the button. And then a lot of people are going to be playing in front of you. They're going to have to act before you act. Gives you more information, more opportunities to bluff, and then you get a lot more control over the pot size as well. So if they check to you and you want to put money in, great. If they check to you and you don't, you can check back. Like you have a lot of control there. So play in position, play aggressive, play a tight range. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully that is successful for you. Tom, thanks for being here, man. This was fun, and we will definitely do something like this again soon.
Sure.
Hopefully next time we can get the rest of the Braintrust in here.
That sounds good.
Hoping to have some more guys. So,
yep.
All right. Well, thanks for being here. Thanks everybody for hanging out, and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye, folks. Have a good one.